It's 10 o'clock. Means it's time for 10 with Tim. I'm really happy to see you today. Thanks for joining me. We are in 2 Samuel chapter 20, verses 1 to 26. Doing this whole chapter today. It's a great chapter, and I'm glad that you're with me. We just go verse by verse every day, Monday through Friday. And if that seems like a slow-moving way to read the Bible, any of you who've been with me now for over a year, we fly. We fly. We have been through so much of the Word of God, and we're just going to keep on going. So stay with me. Keep reading. 2 Samuel chapter 20 is really something else. Now, first off, I'm in 2 Samuel chapter 20 with you. I'm tired. I am tired. But we've had so much go on in 2 Samuel. Can you even imagine being David? David has fought battles. David has, united the kingdom and then nearly lost the kingdom. He had a daughter raped. He had a son murdered. He had a son lead a rebellion against him. Thousands and thousands of men have died. Then he lost that son. He hasn't even had a chance to visit his son's grave. You understand? He hasn't even gotten back home yet. And all of a sudden in chapter 20, there's another rebellion. Now, I know you're thinking, first off, why are we doing this now? Why we got to have another rebellion? But can I just remind you, this is how the devil works. This is really how life is. You would think that if you've had a daughter raped and 2 sons killed and a war and all that kind of stuff, that you would get a day off from trouble. Like you could at least get home and take a bath before you have to, start another chapter of trouble. But that's not how the devil works. The devil doesn't take it easy on you because he knows you're tired. If he thinks you're tired, he puts a target on your back. He is evil. He comes after you when you're weak. So just understand that basic principle of the spiritual life. The devil does not take it easy on you ever. And if he thinks you're weak, he's going to come at you harder. So David has just finished putting down one insurrection, and now he immediately has to face another one led by a troublemaker. I think the Hebrew says a worthless fellow. It's just, okay, understand. One guy. There's one guy, and this one guy causes trouble for the entire nation. One guy. It just takes one worthless troublemaker to mess it up for everybody, and his name is Sheba. He is the son of Bichri, all right? You don't have to know him. He ain't going to last long. Now, at first, this rebellion led by Sheba seems like it's going to be something. Remember when we left off yesterday in chapter 19, there is this tension between North and South. And honestly, you read the Old Testament, that tension exists. About the only time that the North and South of Israel, Israel and Judah hang together is in the reign of David. David is able somehow to keep the North and South together. It probably has something to do with what the men of Judah said yesterday at the end of chapter 19 when they say, the king doesn't show us any special favors. And that's true. David doesn't play favorites. He is the king of the entire nation, and he tries to treat everyone with the same righteous loving compassion. And for that reason, David is a unifying figure, but it's hard and it's tenuous. And Sheba's rebellion demonstrates that. In verse 2, all the men of the north, all the men of Israel are deserting David and ready to follow Sheba. Now, I remind you, David, he's not even home yet. And already, half of the kingdom, the biggest half, has just deserted him again to follow Sheba. Now, the first thing David does is weird, and you may not have understood it. Verse 3, when David gets home, the first thing that he does is he makes those 10 concubines that stay back, and then, Absalom abused them, in front of everybody on top of the roof. Remember that story? Well, when David gets home, the first thing he does is send them away. Now, that's a complicated kind of action. In some ways, it seems heartless. Because like I say, that these women are never really more than sex slaves. But I want you to understand that they are representative of a kind of royal presence, a kind of royal reign that is not necessarily in harmony, obviously, with the covenant approach of the Bible, the way that God, lays out the duties and the prerogatives of the king. Having, somehow a harem full of sex slaves, that was not part of God's plan. Now, the northern tribes, the ones right now that are leaving him, they are the traditionalists. They are the conservatives, we could say, and they're the ones most likely to be very offended by the fact that the king has sex slaves. You understand? And so part of there are multiple reasons for why David would come back and put them away. But don't miss the political reason. He does this in order to try and signal to the northern tribes that he's not going to be that kind of king anymore. He's not going to follow that Eastern Oriental, tradition of having, this, demonstration of his, virility by having, all of these concubines. So he puts them away. There are many reasons, but one of those is political. Now, let me move quickly. So Amasa was, that's Absalom's general, tribe of Benjamin, that David puts into Joab's. He gives him Joab's job. Joab is always utterly faithful to David. Amasa, we don't know yet. We don't know yet. But so David gives him a job. He tells Amasa to mobilize the army of Judah within 3 days and come back to me. Get the army together and come back. Well, Amasa, this is like, his first assignment, and he just doesn't manage to do it within the time frame that David gave. And again, this raises questions. Is he loyal? Is he dragging his feet? Or is he just completely terrible at his job? Well, it don't matter, because Joab just goes on out. David, once more calls Abishai. You got Abishai and Joab. So David dispatches them. Joab goes out. Remember, they're cousins. He gets to Amasa, says, "Cousin," gives him a big hug. And while he's hugging him, he takes out his dagger and slices open his belly, and all of his insides pour out into the street. Sorry if you eat your breakfast, but that's what happened. Joab just kills him. He obviously questions his loyalty. We don't know if Amasa is loyal to David, but we know Joab is. And Joab ain't having none of this. So Amasa has been removed, and Joab gave himself his old job back. All right. In the meantime, Sheba flees to a town way in the north, which means this ain't anything. He starts out in verse 2 with all the men of Israel following him. By the time we get to verse 14, the only people following him are the Bichrites. Remember, he's the son of Bichri. And so basically, like his people. So now we're just down to one redneck family. And they flee to a town called Abel Beth Makkah. Abel is the name of the town. And so they flee to Abel, the furthest city in the north, and they lock themselves in there. All right. So now Joab comes in. Joab don't care, right? Joab is a man of violence. So Joab just lays siege to the town. They're going to starve him out. But you understand, a whole lot of people in the town of Abel, I don't know how many people, it's a small town, but the good people in the town of Abel, they didn't ask for this. They didn't deserve this. And now they're going to get hurt because Joab ain't going to leave till he, ends this by ending the life of Sheba, right? Okay, this is where it gets just so good. Like all this craziness, and all of a sudden, there's this one old lady that sticks her head out the window, and she starts saying, "Are you Joab? Joab, come on. Hey, you Joab? Come over here to me." All right. This is a woman in a war that sticks her head out. She got curlers. Like she got curlers in her hair, and she was in there watching The Price is Right, but she sticks her head out the window because she ain't having none of this, So are you Joab? Come over here. All right. Just notice how we got this one woman, just this one old lady. She's a wise woman, but she shuts it down. She just shuts it down. I love her. She said, "Joab, don't you understand? Abel is a mother in Israel." She calls that town like a mother. We're just like a mother town in Israel. You're really going to blow this place up? Well, what do you want? She says, this is a town of wisdom. It's a town known for wisdom. You don't come here for war. You come here to get some good advice. So can I advise you? And so this woman with the curlers in her hair with Price is Right still blaring in the other room, this woman sits down with Joab and she puts an end to it. It's wisdom in action. You see that? She says this town is known for wisdom, and then she demonstrates how wisdom works. It's not just the ability to see the problem and see the solution. This woman takes action. She says, "What is it that you want?" He says, "Really all we want's the head of Sheba." And she says, "Well, you wait right here. And so she disappears. In a minute, boom, they put Sheba's head over the wall, and it's over, y'all. It's over. That's the craziest story ever. I mean, you got Joab, this man of violence, slicing open a master's belly. And then you got this old lady saying, Joab, would you just bring your fanny over here and can I just give you some advice? And she shuts it down. Yeah. It's at least the second time in the book of 2 Samuel that a wise woman has changed the course of violent men. Remember the woman of Tekoa with David? Was that back in chapter 14? Now the wise woman of Abel, the mother city of Israel. You thought there's going to be a war, but it fizzles. Or at least you can say there's one wise woman shut it down. So you begin the chapter with one troublemaker named Sheba. It all ends, though, with one wise woman who managed to end the war and didn't even have to miss the beginning of the Young and the Restless. You understand? Wisdom in action. What an awesome lady. Listen, join me tomorrow. Chapter 21, verses 1 to 22. Chapter 21, verses 1 to 22. You have a blessed Thursday, a great day, and I'll see you